point you to where the washroom is, and they can let you know, hey, maybe go a little deeper in the woods.
Yeah. I'll keep watch for you, but you can go a bit deeper in the woods.
Welcome to Low Vision Moments, the podcast all about those sometimes frustrating, potentially embarrassing, but often pretty comical things that happen when you are just going about your day with a visual impairment, blindness, and in my case, albinism. I'm your host, I'm Jenny Bovard, and this one is episode number 41. Daryl Lang from Edmonton, Alberta is my guest this time. I have been bugging Daryl to come on for I don't even know how long. So I'm so excited. Daryl is a fellow runner, a fellow lover of animals, and a recently published author. Daryl, thank you so much for being here, finding the time for us. I'm so grateful. What else should our gorgeous audience know about you?
Thank you so much for having me, and hello, gorgeous audience. About me, you introduced me very well, Jenny. Apart from being a runner and a published author now, which still doesn't feel real. I do love animals. I volunteer with animal rescue, and I've rescued 4 cats of my own. In my day job, I work as a legal assistant, and in my limited free time, I'm also going back to school for finance. So there's a lot of things going on in life, and I'm super happy to be here now that things have sort of maybe, I hope, slowed down.
You sound like me, where I'm like, I think things might slow down at this point, and then you say yes to another thing.
Denied. Absolutely denied.
And amongst all of that, you find the time to be a friggin' marathoner. So you have collected a lot of experiences that I hope that we can sort of dive into today. But before we do any of that, could you tell me more about this book called, I love the title, it's called Run for Your Life.
I have my own copy right here. Hi! So this is a gorgeous book. It is a compilation of stories of running and community and resilience. There's so many amazing stories in this book from people who've started running as a way to address trauma and war. There are disabled runners. My submission talks about running with guides. There's, there are other stories that talk about grief and loss. And as much as it sounds like it's a really heavy book, and there are heavy themes to it, it's a beautiful book. I have read it, I have laughed, and I have cried, and it is a book that is about running, but it is not just about running. It's about resilience, like I said before, and the human spirit, and by a bunch of people who just so happen to be runners. It's just an amazing book, and I'm not just saying that because I contributed to it. It was such a great experience being part of this project and having a physical book in my hands, even though I don't see well enough to read it in without the aid of technology, is still just absolutely incredible and amazing. So this is a great book. All of the authors are based out of Alberta, Canada. And the book is available on Amazon. And if anyone wants to order copies directly from me, I can make that happen.
I cannot wait to read this book. I am going to 1000% suggest that Sela add it to their collection so we can have it in every format. But I understand that it's already available through Amazon. So that's certainly one way that we can access it in addition to print, right?
Yeah, it's on print and Kindle.
Well, we will add for sure the links and ways to get people's hands and ears perhaps someday on this book. And you said something when describing the book that it's not just about running, essentially. And it never is. It's not just about running. It's so much more. And for me, that's really, really true. I think you could talk to any runner about why they started, why they keep going, what they've learned. And everyone would have, just as this book probably demonstrates, such a unique experience and story to tell. And it's just never about running. And I think that's almost true about perhaps not every sport, but these I don't know if you would call it an endurance thing. It's really a very physical and mental thing, running. And I've been doing it for 11 years. So I myself have collected some stories. When I first took up running, I had no idea that I would really get so into it and never really stop for this amount of time. I still consider myself a fairly unlikely runner. I don't know who's more likely to be a runner, but I still feel that way because I'm essentially allergic to the sun. I never had any interest in running whatsoever in my life until I started about 11 years ago. And I want to get into all of the reasons why, etc. But I will say that I've had almost exclusively positive road race experiences, certainly not perfect, right? But
No, they never are.
how could it possibly, like, life is not perfect. Therefore, a road race cannot be perfect. But let me tell you, you mentioned run guides, and they are such a special type of person. They are so rare and phenomenal a breed of human being. I have only had good, really exceptional people take on the task of guiding me through a race. I do run without a guide, with a guide. There are all these different techniques that I use, but I continue to love, after all these years, all of the challenges that go along with all of that, the problem solving from, what to wear or the nutrition. It's such a huge process and there's so much to learn and keep learning. And it's obviously made that much more a dynamic thing by my being blind. And amazingly, I've had very few, how do I say this delicately, but I have some GI issues, some gastrointestinal things going on. And I have very few instances of pooping my pants. Because that's a thing in running, and it's never happened during a race, knock on wood, only during long training runs. But I'm not here to talk about pooping my pants. That's
that's good.
That kind of goes hand in hand with the sport, but we're not going to get into that, not yet anyway. But how you and I approach running is probably a little bit different. I have a different level of eyesight than you. I do have quite a lot of usable vision, I guess you could say. But I will say that a lot of preparation, a lot of planning goes into my being able to run a road race.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
for me,
absolutely.
the way that I do it is, if I want to run a race independently, first of all, I will usually pick an area that I know pretty well. So my hometown or my city where I live now. These are comfortable places for me where, like, I have an idea of the layout of the city. And I have an idea of what the turn-by-turn directions and the map mean when I try to put these things together. But a lot of preparation goes into it for me, and that includes this favorite race of mine. It's called Legs for Literacy, and it's in my hometown. There's nothing like running the streets of your hometown, by the way, after having been bullied and just like so lost when you live there. To run the streets of your hometown and like complete a 10K or a half marathon, there's something really special about that. But what I do to get ready for this race in particular, this half marathon 2 years ago, like usual, I memorize the turn by turn in directions as best I can. And I couple that with studying Google Maps. So again, it's my hometown. I know a good chunk of this area, but it goes off into a part of town that I'm really not familiar with called Riverview. I'm from Moncton. It mostly takes place in Moncton, but it goes out into Riverview in a trail system. And so I get on Google Maps and I study what the different intersections look like, where I'm supposed to turn. I pick out landmarks and things like that. A lot of preparation goes into it. And then you have all the other regular preparation, of course, that goes into running a half marathon. It was perfect weather, Daryl. It was like overcast. It's in late October. So there's a nice chill in the air. I like running when it's cool, 0 degrees, a little bit below 0 degrees. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. My running nickname among my running friends is the furnace, because if it's anything, probably about -10 or above, gloves are absolutely optional. So it's, I run very warm, so I prefer to run when it is cooler. And I will choose where I do races based on how hot it's going to be.
Yes, you are speaking my language. Absolutely the same deal for me. Now, with this half marathon, this was 2 years ago. I thought everything went swimmingly. I was super prepared. I felt great throughout the whole race. I found a gaggle of ladies to follow without them knowing I was following them, because this is one of my tactics.
Wonderful. That's great.
When I run a race solo, I want to make sure I'm not getting lost. And the signage tends to be pretty good at this particular race, pretty high contrast, but it's super easy to get lost in areas where you're not familiar. And when things spread out, right? So I was following this gaggle of ladies, and we were really similar pace. It was like, okay, pink hat, red shoes, I'm following you. You are my people. So everything was going great until I was like, I don't know, maybe I thought I was about 2 kilometers from the finish line. And I had done this route before. So I was like, I know I'm getting close. And things aren't lining up, though. Things start not lining up with what I'm hearing on my Apple Watch and what is happening on the street. So I'm running and thinking, I should be getting close to the starting line, to the finish line, rather. And my watch isn't telling me the same thing. My watch is telling me I still have like 2.5 kilometers to go. And I'm like, oh no, no. I don't, what's happening? And it's at a downhill part where I begin to realize this. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to gun it down this hill. I know that I need to stay in this lane, and I'm going to go nice and fast. So I'm, end of race adrenaline is coursing through my system. So I'm giving her. And then my watch says 21 kilometers, and I'm still not at the finish line. And you know that 21 kilometers is the half marathon distance, 21.1.
Yes. So you should be hearing people screaming at you to run in. Yeah.
But I'm not.
Oh,
but
no.
I'm not. I am, in fact, at the scariest part of the race, where it's a lane of traffic in between two other lanes of traffic. So the one lane of traffic in the middle has been closed for the race, but there are 2 lanes of traffic that are still open on either side. So it's like the scariest part of the race. As I said, things have thinned out. I've lost my gaggle. I'm hearing 21 kilometers in my ear, and I'm like, where's the finish line?
No.
I'm so tired. I ended up, obviously I finished. I got to the finish line and I checked my watch, and I had run like an extra, at least a extra half kilometer at least.
Oh no.
And I'm so confused, and I'm kind of angry, and I find the gaggle of ladies who I had been following without them knowing. And we were like kind of congratulating each other, like, hey, great job, pink hat, red shoes.
Yay.
did great. I was following you. I didn't tell them I was following them, but I was like, ladies, did any of you notice a discrepancy in the distance? Like, did any of you experience this? And they're all like, nope, looks perfect to me. My friend helped organize the race. And I was like, oh, okay. I just kind of zipped it and went about my cranky pants self. And I was just like so miffed. I went back to my hotel. I had a little cry. But then, you got to get on with your day. So you go and have your big meal, you get together with your friends and your family. And I kind of just tried to forget about it. I was, hoping for a better time, yada, yada, super confused. But I let it go for a little while. And then I thought about a week later, maybe I should email the race organizers just to ask, like, did anyone else report any discrepancies? And I got an email back. They said, no, everything looks fine to us. Nobody else mentioned anything. And I was just like, thank you for getting back to me. I don't want to piss anybody off.
No, you don't.
No, I certainly don't. And, I knew it was something that I had done, but I couldn't figure it out. I went and studied the map and the directions again, and I couldn't figure out where I got lost. I was like, did I go off course at some point and not even realize? When things thinned out, and then I got back on course, I had no idea what happened. And then I figured it out only months later when I decided I need to get to the bottom of this. I went and investigated further. And this was like a low vision moment within a low vision moment, Daryl. It was like so stupid, so stupid. So do you use an Apple Watch?
I have a Samsung watch. I'm out of the
okay.
the Apple sphere. So
okay, fair.
Yeah.
I would love to hear sometime more about your smartwatch and your tracking strategies, but I digress. I looked into it further a couple of months later to get to the bottom of it. And instead of looking at the information on my watch, with my Apple Watch, I can kind of read the text on it if it's really, really up, like in my eyeball, like in my face. Otherwise, it's much like other everyday things where I can tell the shape of the word, or I know it by memory, by just knowing where it is on the watch, much like I do with a smartphone and other things. So I had tappity tap on race day, started my workout, started tracking it, of course, right?
No.
Can you guess what I did?
I
chose indoor run.
Oh no.
I had chosen indoor run.
Oh no.
No wonder it didn't track it properly. It thought I was indoors. And for months, I had no idea.
Oh.
What a crappy lesson that was. A lesson nonetheless. And I always say I use running as a point of reference in everyday life. And this is no exception. It was just such a stupid thing. And I still haven't PB'd that race. But anyway, I don't know how I did it, but I did it. I clearly wasn't paying attention, and I paid for it with my legs. Big time. You haven't done this, or have you?
No. I've done a lot of things. That has never been one of them. But I can tell you, my first half marathon, because I decided in 2018 that I was going to stop talking about doing a thing and I would actually do it. So I decided in 2017 that I was going to get ready to take an amazing trip across primarily Montana. It's a long story how that came out, but the short version is that my husband at the time, he and I and his sister and one of my best friends, we did a road trip We called it the Epic Road Trip of Awesome, and we went through 2 provinces and 5 states in 9 days. It was insane and crazy. We did so much time in the car. We broke into a campsite. It was great. But on our way through Montana, I have a thing about state capitol buildings. And
Okay.
I have always loved them. I don't know why. There's always just been something about them. And we couldn't stop at the Montana State Capitol. And I was really bummed about it. So we're driving down the highway and I'm like, I'm so bummed. Like, we can't stop. We don't have time. And this thought just enters my head, well, why don't you just go? And I'm like, sure, I'll just go and take a trip to Helena, Montana, just because for fun. And then this trip just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So it took a year to save up and plan and whatever. And about 6 months before I went on the trip, I was like, well, I wonder if there's any half marathons when I'm traveling, because, well,
That's how we think.
That's how we think. And, hindsight being what it is, I think it was sort of a thing I felt like I needed to prove to myself. I didn't want to run a half marathon in places where I knew anybody. So there happened to be a half marathon in Billings, Montana when I was there. And I was able to get things, set up so I could run it. And I would say my low vision moment of that was because I'd never run a road race before. I'd done like a couple of fundraising 10Ks, but they're pretty chill. They're less intense than, a marathon or a half. And I could not see that people were basically throwing their drink cups on the ground at the aid stations.
Oh, it's the worst.
And I was just like, where's the garbage? And everyone's like, just throw it down, we'll scoop it up. And I'm like, but I'm Canadian. We don't litter. Newsflash, we absolutely do. I got over that really quickly for my next races. But I still kind of want to throw things in the garbage if I can. But it was really fun.
Or at least really far to the side.
Yeah, like I don't want people to trip on anything. I don't want to trip on anything. Races, I always walk through water stations because of all the cups and all of the whatever, if there's been anything spilled, like I've had someone bump me, which has spilled whatever I'm drinking. So that's never super pleasant. But yeah, that was probably my initiation into racing, because they have people with the scoops that just, they go and they sweep everything up. But
hold up. I didn't know. I don't know about these scoop things. So there's it's like a shovel?
Yeah.
I don't doubt it, because as you were describing that, I have experienced that, where it's like some races use clear cups and I can hear them dunk dunk whatever hitting the ground, but I'm not gonna see them, not in time to get out of the way anyway.
Right.
So it's either a crunching thing where you're like crunching on top of them and like slip sliding,
right,
or you're wading through it like a ball pit, like the worst, scariest ball pit.
Yes, I hate the ball pit. It is terrible. Yes. So yeah, they do have like a scoop that it's kind of like a shovel. I guess every race is different, right? So, but they do have ways of, because obviously they're not going to send people in to manually go and pick everything up.
I guess it depends on the scale of the race too. I think the races we have different experiences in that you've gone international, and I'm like, I want to stay close to home where I know where stuff is. We said that guides are a special breed. And running guides I've only ever had really good experiences running with guides. Like I said, not only do I always run a faster race when I have a guide, for obvious reasons, I think, but you so
don't
stubborn.
Expend the mental energy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. But yeah, they're a really special kind of person, but it requires such a huge level of trust.
Yes. Yeah,
Right?
I would agree.
Have you like had any awkward or weird experiences with guides?
Yes. Yeah, I've had one experience where um, it was my third marathon, and my training went completely to crap, and I'd gotten injured too. And I'm just like, okay, I'd been in touch with both of the guides, and because they had an exchange at about the 23-kilometer mark or so. And so my guide for the first half, I don't know if he was just a faster runner, or if it was an error on my part because I was converting, kilometers, minutes per kilometer to minutes per mile, and I don't really do that great in my head. Or if it
That's like the one bit of math I can kind of do just because of so much practice. I'm sorry, go on.
whatever times 1.6, it does work. It's just complicated. But I don't know if we just weren't a good match. I kept on telling him, like, look, I can't run this in the way that I think we'd originally talked about because I need more in the tank for later. And he just kept on going so fast, and I kept trying to get him to slow down, and it just was not working. And by the time we got to the exchange point, I'm just like, I'm so done. But I'm like, no, because my second half guide has been waiting for 2.5 hours or whatever it was. And I'm not just going to leave him sitting there for 2.5 hours and not finish this. If I have to walk the last 18 kilometers, then I have to walk the last 18 kilometers, and there's nothing I can do about that. And my second half of the marathon went considerably better, although 15 minutes in the Porta-Potties was not fun. I blame the Gatorade. I had
the race Porta-Potties.
So California International Marathon has the distinction as being the race with like the most Porta-Potties per, what is it? I think it's the most Porta-Potties per runner of any race in North America, I think. And they are everywhere. They're all over.
I will pee my pants before I go to a port. I don't even care.
After experiencing the tilted Porta-Potty, I will agree with you, but there's not much you can do because that race, I had Gatorade crystals in my water bottle, which is normally fine, but it was stronger than I think I'm used to. And so it didn't do my body any favors. So I've since found other things that work better for me, so I can avoid the Porta-Potties.
That's a fun part of running, right?
Yes.
Is the nutrition. And I'll get into my journey perhaps if we have time today. But please go on. So you're at the halfway mark.
I'm at the halfway mark, and I'm doing the switch, and I'm going, I really hope this second half goes better than the first. Because the first, I just felt like we couldn't communicate, and there was this sort of, macho man sort of presentation of my first guide. It did not work. And I knew, and it's funny because I think I felt like when I met him the night before the race, I was just like, this is not going to go well. This will not, like, I feel it that this is not going to gel. And I didn't say anything because what do you say? I have a bad feeling about this, and it's not like they have anyone else.
I wonder what it was that gave you those vibes, but I know it. I think I know what you mean because I'm quite stubborn. I enjoy running by myself, but when I first started running, I almost always engaged a volunteer for road races because I was absolutely terrified to run outdoors on my own. And
Sure.
I've since developed other techniques to be able to do it in my neighborhood and somewhat competently at road races, although I'm learning that there are such benefits to running with a guide, but there's an added pressure sometimes to perform to like their expectation, to their standard, because sometimes they think that they're doing us a favor by pushing us, but not listening to maybe what we're saying. And like my needs are that I need to slow down now so that I can finish this thing.
Exactly.
Right. And if I want to
Right.
do a negative split, that's up to me. I'm not going to gun it the whole time. Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like that's sometimes that's part of the reason why I like to run on my own. I don't like the added pressure of having to live up to someone else's expectation and like let them down in a way, even though they're a stranger I just met this morning before the race and maybe exchange an email with. It doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't know
Right.
you. You don't even live in my city. Like you came in
Right.
from out of town.
Yeah. Right.
And I love you for it, but listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I will say for the most part, most of my guides have been generally very, very amazing.
Yeah.
Whether I've raced with them, trained with them, or both, they've just, all of my guides for the most part have just been incredible.
On your training runs, do you run around the city and you sort of know where the public washrooms are kind of thing?
So for my longer training runs, I run with a group usually, and so I'll have a guide
Oh,
with
so
me
lucky.
running with me. And so we had a group of a big, like we used to be a really huge group. I mean, now we're getting bigger again, but during the pandemic, we'd have smaller groups that would sort of go and run. And then as you know, restrictions changed and things like that, some had family members who were immunocompromised, or they were immunocompromised, so they weren't super comfortable coming out for for group runs and stuff. And so the group sort of diverged and converged, and now we're kind of getting back to normal, such as that is now. So there's always been a group of us, so whoever's picking the routes, usually, especially if we're doing anything longer than about 10 kilometers, makes sure that there are, or at least if there are washrooms on the route, make sure to point them out.
I love that for you. I
Yeah,
love that
yeah,
because
it's great.
I don't have it so good.
No, most people don't, and I don't take that for granted. Even though it kind of seems like, well, yeah, this is just a thing, like, but I don't. I realize it's a my running family is just so special, and I'm so fortunate. To have this group of amazing, amazing runners. So if you're watching these guys, I love you all.
Oh, I hope they do. I hope they do. And
I do too.
it's I've tried. It's kind of been a thing that I've tried to find a running group over all these years. I've really tried to make it work, but it's just I've never been able to like get to the meetup spot in time after work, or there's always been a barrier that I've not been able to like get over. So I've made it work for me. I'm fortunate in another way. My long training runs, I live about, I'm about a kilometer from a really great trail system called the Chain of Lakes Trail. And it's paved primarily. It's an old railroad. So it's been paved. It's paved for many kilometers, but then it turns to crusher dust. Not
Okay.
my favorite.
No.
A bit of an added challenge, but whatever. It is what it is. And so I'm very fortunate. That's where I do most of my long runs. It's pretty well uphill on the way there, downhill on the way back, which is kind of nice. But it's kind of secluded in that there's like maybe one spot where I know I can go into a business and use a washroom just off the trail if I need to. And for a few years, there was a Porta-Potty at a similar spot to where that business is. So it's like kind of not really needed anymore. And it's not there anymore. They've removed it from the trail altogether. So if the business is closed, you're SOL. Or, right? So I struggle with, and over the years, I've really figured out my nutrition. It was a real struggle in the beginning. I did poop my pants on this trail a couple of times in long runs, but I didn't stop. I finished the run. There was no going home. I was out there. So you just deal. You just deal. But there are times when you gotta have a little tinkle, and you gotta stop, because you gotta stop and you gotta find a place, like, because it's if not, it's just gonna happen. Like I said earlier, it's just gonna happen naturally, and you're gonna be uncomfortable. So something I struggle with is I usually go and do my long runs solo on this trail because it's super accessible for me. It's wonderful. It is busy with people, though. It's busy with people and kids and cyclists. It's a very much a shared path, which is great. I love to see it used, right? We tandem bike on this same trail. It's wonderful, especially when cyclists use their bells, cyclists, when you're passing. So anyway.
Yes. Yes. Cyclists, use your bells, please. And if you don't have one, they're inexpensive. Please.
Use your voice. You can use your voice too.
You
Anyway,
can. Oh, yeah.
it
Anyway,
works.
we
Nonetheless,
digress.
I envy people who can just find a spot off the trail in a wooded area, and pop a squat and be done with it and get back to your run. I don't have it this easy. I can't tell if people can see me or not. And I'm so pale, Daryl. If my ass is out having a pee, you're going to see the big white moon from I don't even know how many feet away. So, like, I am so cautious. If I ever do pull over and have a pee in the woods, it takes a lot of extra time, because I'm like going deep into the woods here. I've been stabbed in the butt with branches. Like, I don't care what it takes. I go really, really deep, because I don't know if they can. And you know what? People have probably seen me and I don't even know. But I really hope not too many times. So I struggle with that. So that's a whole other good reason to have a group to run with, is they can point you to where the washroom is, and they can let you know, hey, maybe go a little deeper in the woods.
Yeah. I'll keep watch for you, but
right.
You can go a bit deeper in the woods.
That's right. Yes, this is what runners talk about. And I hope that the people enjoying the episode are a little bit on board with us, at least, because we have talked about running almost exclusively. It is not our entire identity, but it is 95% of my, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But that said, Daryl, before we go, did you want to talk about anything besides running before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I talk a lot about running. I think one of the things, ironically, that running has brought me is so many different connections. I've met some amazing people from, all over the country, all over the United States. Runners are some of the most generous people out there. So many, I've been so lucky to meet some amazing people, whether they've, been able to provide transportation, or a guide, or I've met people who've done something as simple as watch my guide dog while I'm racing, so that she's not by herself in a hotel room. And I joke that my guide dogs have seen more of Sacramento than I have, even though I've run through it. But people, I think one thing that my own experience has shown me is just how generous people can be. And it's so nice to be able to lean into that and to be able to experience, the joy of, in some ways, receiving generosity, even in a position where it feels like we can't really give much back in return, right? I can't run a road race without a guide. It's not possible for me. And so having somebody who gives up their time on, a Sunday morning to run, a half marathon with me, or, does a bunch of training runs, even knowing that, their race results may not be what they're physically capable of running, because they're, dealing with my pace. I do think that, it's just such a gift. And I hesitate to to take that for granted, because people can be just so amazing and so selfless in a lot of many, many ways.
I am so grateful to not only the guides that I've run with, but also the race organizers and the people who are open to hearing how to make these events more accessible. I've only had good reception for those types of things as well, and that's what it's so fulfilling. It's running is so fulfilling because it's something that I think and I feel that I'm able to participate in fully, and it feels that way. There are some things that I participate in life that I don't feel that I'm doing at the level that I would like to do it at. And I'm certainly not like an elite runner. That's not what I'm saying. I feel that I'm able to participate in a way that feels full and complete. And our guides, and the organizers of races, they help make that feeling very possible. Well, I'm not sorry that all we talked about was running.
I'm not.
And
No, no, I'm never sorry when I talk about running.
And you never know, we might entice someone to lace up their shoes and give it a try. So,
Yeah, if you're looking for an opportunity to guide someone who's visually impaired in your community, or if you're visually impaired and you're looking to get out there and start your fitness journey by running and walking, running or walking, or both, I would definitely recommend checking out the website unitedinstride.com. They've recently revamped and got a great website to connect you with people in your community, or if you're traveling and you want to see if you can go for a run with someone where you are traveling. I've met several guides through that, and it's just been a great experience. So definitely check that out.
thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing all that you've shared today. It's, like I said, been a total pleasure to get to know you and talk all about running. But
All about
we should
running.
probably stop because, like, man, we could just keep going.
We could. We really, really could. But this has been a lovely experience. Thank you so much for poking me every few months to come and join you, and I appreciate your patience while life went absolutely crazy for probably close to a year. So thank you.
We get it. It's all good. I'm just glad that you came today, and this is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun.
Thank you so much for listening, watching, and subscribing. Have Daryl and I inspired you to take up running, or are you going to be walking in the opposite direction? You can get in touch by adding a comment on YouTube, or you can send an email to podcast@ami.ca. You can even give us a call and leave a message at 1-866 509-4545. Once more, the phone number, 1-866-509-4545. Just make sure to mention low vision moments in the message, please and thank you. You can come and follow me. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I'm there under Uberblonde4, UBERBLONDE, and the number 4. Mark Aflalo is our technical producer. Ryan Dillahanty is our podcast coordinator, and manager at AMI Audio is Andy Frank. Our theme song is by Out of Controller. Until next time, I want to give a shout out to all of the running guides that I've had over the years. I could not have done it without you, including those who didn't even know I was following them.